So we shall continue once again. Just now we have seen that the factors which govern the stability of different complexes, those are first factor, that is a nature of metal, that plays a very important role as we know. Second, the nature of ligand, which without which the complex is not at all formed. So ligand also play a very important role in the formation of, in the stability of the complexes. And third, the concentration. So these are the three factors, they govern the stability of complexes. Just now we have seen that greater is the charge on the metal and smaller the size of the metal, more will be the stable complex. So in other words, we can conclude that higher is the charge, smaller is the size of the central metal atom, the more is the stability of the complex. So this is because highly charged smaller ions, they can permit closer and faster approach of the ligand and a greater force of attraction that exists between such ligand and the metal. So ferric ions, if we compare the stabilities of the same ion, same metal ion in two different oxidation states, then definitely that ion which carries greater charge, small size, that can create more stable complexes as well. Now, the second factor that also plays a very important role is the nature of ligand. Just see here. Now, here we have seen that these beta values are indicative that the ferric ion that forms a stable complex, while the ferrous ion that do not form a stable complex as compared to ferric ion. Now, the second is the nature of ligand. As we have seen that this ligand plays a vital role in the formation of any complex, without which the ligand complexation not possible. Now, again, with regard to the nature of ligand, first parameter is again with size and charge on ligand, because we know there are different ligands are there. Some ligands are positively charged, some ligands are negatively charged, and some ligands are neutral. So which ligands, and with respect to the size, they can form a stable complex. With respect to this, again, if the ligand, if it is having smaller size, they can form a greater, or they can form a more stable complex. For example, if we are having the ligands such as FCl-BrI, here as we know, the 7th A group of the periodic table, which contains these halogen series, fluorine, chlorine, bromine, and iodine. As we know, if we go down any group, then size increases. Size, that definitely increases. Why size increases? Because addition of electron takes place to the new share of electrons, and hence fluorine is small in size, chlorine is little bit large in size, bromine larger in size, and iodine is largest in size. So with respect to the size of ligands, smaller the size of ligand, then greater will be the stability. Amongst all these ligands, fluorine being small in size and it is having greater charge, the electronegativity value for fluorine is 4.0 units, and hence fluoride complexes are more stable. The second parameter with respect to the nature of ligands is the basic character. The basic character of ligand. We know there are some ligands which are basic in nature, but greater the basic character, more will be the stability. For example, here if we compare two neutral ligands such as NH3 and H2O, here it is seen that ammonia is having more basic character as compared to water. So the complexes with ammonia, those are more stable. So more the basicity, greater will be the stability of the resultant complex. Then one more parameter which is there with respect to again the nature of ligand, which is also very important, that is a chelate effect. Perhaps you might be knowing the topic that we already studied at BSc 2 level, that formation of a heterocyclic ring between the metal and ligand that adds to the stability of the complex. So chelate effect, so chelating ligands, the chelating ligands if are present, and if non-chelating type of ligands are there, then amongst these two types, which ligands can form a stable complexes? It is seen that if chelating type of ligands are there, they can form a more stable complexes as compared to non-chelating complex, because here in case of chelating type of ligand, a 5-membered heterocyclic ring formation takes place, but here no ring formation takes place, and hence non-chelating type of ligands if are present, they are less stable. I would like to give you one example. When two molecules of ethylene diamine, they form a complex with copper, then such complexes are more stable. For example, the complex I would like to show you here, when two molecules, they trap this copper ion at the center. One molecule of ethylene diamine that I would like to show here, NH2, CH2, NH2, CH2. So first molecule of ethylene diamine, this is a second molecule of ethylene diamine, NH2, CH2, NH2, CH2. Here, this is known as a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So here 5-membered heterocyclic ring formation takes place. So these complexes are more stable. Now, why these complexes are less stable when non-chelating type of ligands are there? Just see here. Again, take for instance a tetramine complex. So formation of a complex with 4 ammonia molecules, which can be shown like this. So here, this is a tetramine complex of copper with ammonia ligands. Here, there is no formation of a heterocyclic ring is there. So this is known as a metal complex, which is less stable because non-chelating type of ligands are involved, and here this is more stable because the chelating type of ligands are involved, in addition to which there is a formation of a heterocyclic ring is there. So there are 2 heterocyclic rings are formed, and that leads to the stability of this complex. So in conclusion, one can say that when chelating type of ligands are there, for example, the ethylene diamine type of ligands are there, then they can form more stable complexes than non-chelating. Here only ammonia molecules are there. Those are known as a non-chelating type of monodentate ligands. So they do not form a stable complex. Then the third point that I would like to explain here is what is the effect of concentration on the stability of complex. As we know that large number of complexes are stable in solid state. The complexes thus formed are stable in solid state or sometimes in aqueous solution also. But the solution must be having the higher concentration. But if the concentration of this solution, if it is low, then these complexes, they dissolve in solution, or the solution of when such complexes are dissolved in less concentrated solution, then there are certain different properties are arise. For example, if we take for instance a aqueous complex of chromium like this 2- and a chloro complex of chromium. First of all, if we see this chromium complex, this is 2 plus. If we add this water, which is a less concentrated than this, then this can form a new complex. That means water molecules, sorry, yes, here it is CONH2O 5. This water molecule that gets added to inside this coordination sphere, and it can form, due to addition of one water molecule, hexaco chromium complex is formed like this. And here one chlorine is also there, so as to satisfy the secondary valency. Here this chlorine that is replaced by this water molecule. Now before the addition of water, the solution of this penta-aquochromium chloride solution was green in color. But when this water molecule replaces this chlorine, the solution, resultant solution turns to be violet. So the concentration that plays a very important role. Similarly, if we take for instance a tetrachlorocuprate ion, then it is yellow in color in solid state, but when we add water to this solid, then the chloride ions of copper complex are replaced by water molecule, and it can form a new complex when the 4 chloride ions are replaced by water molecules. Now the solution turns to be pale blue in color. See the changes that took place just by dissolving the complex in a less concentrated solution. So in conclusion, a large number of complexes are stable in solid state or sometimes in solution of higher concentration. So higher concentrated solution is there, then they are also stable. But when they are decomposed or when are dissolved in water or in a solution of less concentrated media, then the changes taking place from green to violet or from yellow to pale blue that takes place. So this is how we have completed the 3 factors. That is, one factor, nature of metal, as we know, greater the charge, smaller the size, more will be the stability. Secondly, with respect to the ligands, the size and charge that also matter, and here smaller the size, greater the charge on the ligand, that also creates a stable complex. And thirdly, we have seen the chelating and non-chelating type of ligands. Just now we have seen that if a chelating type of ligand is involved in the complexation, then chelating type of ligand, they form a heterocyclic ring, and hence they form a more stable complex than a non-chelating type of ligand, for example, ammonia. And just now we have seen the concentration. Now, one more point that is added this year when the syllabus was revised, one more point that is a very complicated to study, that is known as the determination of stability constant. Determination of stability constant. But here the certain derivations are given in your textbook, but I would like to only give you some points of interest that will help you during your exam time, that during exam the derivations not being asked, but only some MCQs will be asked. Which are those? Here the determination of stability constants can be carried out by using 3 important methods. You should remember this. The first method to determine the stability constant is known as Jobs method. You should remember the name of this method. Now, what is the peculiarity of this method? Here, the solution of a metal and ligand that is prepared with a constant, the solution of metal and ligand that is prepared with a constant value, and such solution is used so as to determine the stability. So you should remember the solution of metal ligand with a constant value. This should be remembered with respect to the Jobs method. Now, the second, that is known as the mole ratio method. In this case, in mole ratio method, the method was invented by Yeo and Jones. You should remember the names of these two scientists, Yeo and Jones. Mole ratio method that should be correlated with Yeo and Jones. This will help for your MCQ questions. How the stability constant can be determined in this method, that you have to remember in very brief. That is, here the concentration of metal is kept constant. So the concentration, by keeping the concentration of metal constant and the concentration of ligand, that is varies. So either of the component that should be kept constant, that means here the solution of metal ion, the concentration of which is kept constant, and the concentration of ligand that is varies. That means different concentrations are used in order to determine the stability constants in this mole ratio method. So you should remember this point as well as this point. Whenever mole ratio method is used, Yeo and Jones. Another parameter is that the concentration of metal is kept constant while the concentration of ligand that is varied. And third method is known as a slope ratio method. Third method is known as a slope ratio method. Here, this particular method, in this method, again, a concentration of metal and ligand, either of this metal or ligand, that is taken in excess. Normally, the solution of metal ion, that is taken in excess and it should be constant in this case. And the second component, that is the ligand, here the concentration is varied. And so by using such different concentration of metal and the ligand, one can determine the stability of a constant. And here the method that is developed by Harvey, this method was developed by Harvey and Manning. You should remember these two names. This is a method which was developed by, this is a Harvey and Manning, where the concentration of the two components amongst which the concentration of metal that is taken in excess, but it should be constant, but the concentration of ligand that is varied. So by using such solution, one can determine the stability constant. So stability constants can be determined by using three important methods. One method that is known as a Jobs method, second method that is known as a mole ratio method, and third is known as a slope ratio method. And you should remember these parameters with respect to the methods. So in the first method, solution of metal and ligand with the constant value is taken. In the mole ratio method, the concentration of only metal is kept constant and concentration of ligand that is varied. And in the third method, that is the concentration of the metal is kept constant and it is taken in excess as compared to the ligand. So this completes our topic that is known as a coordination chemistry, where we have studied this topic in two different aspects. In the first aspect, we have studied the inorganic reaction mechanism for the coordination complexes, and in the second, that we have studied the thermodynamic and kinetic stabilities of different complexes. So here, I would like to continue with a very interesting topic that is known as the bioinorganic chemistry. This topic is also very important and very interesting to study. So this is known as a bioinorganic chemistry. So if a question of one sentence question, if it is asked that what is a bioinorganic chemistry? In brief, we can say that bioinorganic chemistry is nothing but the study of metals and non-metals. Study of metals. So here the study of metals and non-metals in biological systems. Study of metals and non-metals in biological systems is known as the bioinorganic chemistry. What is the meaning of this study of this metals and non-metals in biological processes? For example, we normally every day we breathe and take up atmospheric oxygen inside the lungs. Oxygen also a biological metal, a metal that plays a biological role. What is a biological role? The biological role of oxygen is it should induce respiration. It should induce respiration. Another example that I would like to give you, for example, calcium. Calcium also plays a very important role in our body. That is, whatever the bones and teeth or the skeletal system that is present in our body, the only responsible factor is a calcium. So calcium that is present in bones. So bones are made up of this calcium, without which bones are not formed. So calcium plays the formation of bones. It is again a biological activity. So the role of metals and non-metals. I have given the example of metal and oxygen is a non-metal. So the role of metals and non-metals in biological systems is known as a bioinorganic chemistry. Now, as we know, an element is considered. We know there are around 30 elements, 30 to 35 elements are required for the normal functioning of the human and animal life. As we know, without this chemistry, one cannot survive on this earth. So an element is considered essential if it has a specific indispensable role to sustain the life in living organism. The absence of such element or even the deficiency, that means if calcium is present but if it is present in lesser quantity, that also leads to some serious hindrance. That means the human being cannot survive. So two different aspects are there. An element that is present, the absence of this element that gives again serious hindrance, or even the deficiency that also creates certain diseases in human body. So either the element must be present in proper quantity. These are known as essential elements. So I would like to give you, there are two types of elements are required for healthy growth of our life. One type of element that is known as essential elements, and second is known as a trace element. What is the difference between the essential elements and trace elements? Essential elements can be defined as the role of few elements is essential for to carry out the biological processes of plants and animals. For example, the role of calcium in building the teeth and bones, that is noteworthy here. Thus, about 30 to 35 elements have been recognized as an essential element in a proper functioning of at least some forms of life. Without the presence of these elements, life is not possible. So these elements are known as essential elements. So the elements which are absolutely essential or absolutely needed by our body so as to carry out the various metabolic processes are called as essential elements. These elements are required in very large quantities and hence are known as major elements. So those elements which are required in large quantities, or those elements which are absorbed in large quantities, are known as essential elements. What are essential elements? Say for example, for instance, if you consider there is no oxygen in atmosphere for 30 minutes, what will happen? You can imagine. If oxygen is not there in the atmosphere, nowadays oxygen that plays a very important role in this pandemic situation. So if suppose if oxygen is not there in the atmosphere for 30 minutes, whether the human or plant life or animal life is possible, the answer is definitely no. Normally about 15 liters of oxygen that is needed by our body for proper mechanism of respiration. So this oxygen is absolutely essential, without which life is not possible. Or another example, calcium. Say for example, if calcium is not there in our body, no teeth, no bones, no human skeleton is possible. So all these elements which are required by our body in large quantities, and hence all such elements are known as major elements or essential elements. There are certain elements which are required in very small quantity, that is a trace quantity is there, very small or negligible quantity is required. All such elements are known as a micro elements or trace element. The quantity is very less. It is perhaps sometimes ppm, parts per million, or sometimes it is also present in parts per billion. So very negligible quantity that is required so as to carry out our mechanism. So the elements, some elements are required in very small quantities, without which the life is also not possible. So as the quantity that is required in very small quantity, parts per million or parts per billion, without which human life is not possible, all such elements are known as a trace element. For example, in the early days, the salt that was used that do not contain iodine, but there are some regions in the world where the proper functioning of thyroid gland that is governed by the presence of iodine. So government of India has made compulsory for all salt manufacturing industry that they have to add a negligible quantity of iodine in salt, and hence nowadays we can see that the salt that is available in market that we have seen, that is a iodized salt. Perhaps you might have read this word that is present on the plastic bag of the salt. Iodized salt means it contains a very minute quantity of the iodine, which avoids the formation of a disease that is known as a goiter, which is on account of the malfunctioning of the thyroid gland. So for the proper functioning of thyroid gland, this iodine plays a very important role. In addition to this iodine, selenium, fluorine, boron, these are also named as trace elements. These are also known as trace element, the quantity of which that is very less. So here we have seen two types of elements are needed for a proper mechanism or proper metabolism of plants, animals, and human body. The elements are categorized into essential element and a trace element. Essential element, the quantity of which is required in large quantity, hence are known as a major elements, without which human life is not possible. So these are absolutely essential, without which life is not possible. So example is oxygen or calcium. These are the essential element. There are certain other elements, those are also present, those are also required in the form of essential elements. The second type that is known as a trace elements. So trace elements, the elements which are required in our body in a very small quantity, trace amount that is required, very negligible quantity that is required, and hence are known as a trace elements, the quantity of which is very less, parts per million or parts per billion. So very, very minute quantity that is required so as to carry out different metabolic processes. I would like to show you for your interest. I'm having some slides and I'm having still 5 minutes. So I would like to show you. Let's see this. I would like to show you first of all the deficiency diseases. Perhaps you may not be able to eat today after looking at these. Just now I have mentioned that iodine deficiency creates the disease that is known as a goiter. So here, this is a goiter disease. See how the bulbs are coming out of the neck. It is because of the malfunctioning of thyroid gland. So for proper functioning of thyroid gland, the secretion that matters, the secretion from the thyroid gland that governs our body systems. So nowadays we can eat this iodized salt, which permits the deficiency of iron, or which also very important here. See this is a deficiency of calcium. See this boy, he cannot be stand erect. As good as if calcium is absent from our body, our body will be just like our clothes that the clothes, those are dried on a pipe. It is as good as our body will be as good as the pipe that might be seen here. I'm having the slide like this. See, this is a physician. This is a physician. What calcium here deficiency? See, this is a doctor. He is holding the hand of patient. See, due to calcium deficiency, how the situation is a pitiable condition here. This is again a doctor, and she is a patient that the physician is saying, Mary, have not been taking your calcium pills, have you? That means he is asking whether you have consumed enough calcium pills so as to keep your bones and teeth healthy. The calcium deficiency can also be seen just by looking your nails. So nails become brittle. You can remove just by picking with your finger. The nails can be easily removed. This is a perfect indication that calcium deficiency is there. One more picture is there here. These are the teeth. Majority of the teeth are absent from the mouth. There are no enough teeth. So that also creates this. Now I would like to show you one more slide. This is a iron deficiency. See, this is a she is a lady. The hairs have gone. Also, the iron deficiency can be examined just by looking the eyelids. This is the indication, and here this is a cheek of a baby where these are the rashes because of the iron deficiency. One more slide that I would like to show you here. This is a phosphorus deficiency. So in some regions, particularly in West Bengal, Calcutta, there is a deficiency of phosphorus in the early days. So the human beings who were working in the mines, they are suffering from this phosphorus deficiency. So in order to come over the phosphorus deficiency, you have to consume more and more phosphorus containing fruits and the food. That is a banana can provide maximum quantity of phosphorus. So start eating banana. So less than 1 minute is left. So we shall continue with this tomorrow also. So I would like to stop here.